friends. Welcome to Unmatched. The modern workplace, especially in the wake of the remote work revolution, has amplified a disconnect that many of us feel between their personal and professional lives. Many employees, particularly working parents, struggle to find balance and genuine connection in their careers. However, there are leaders out there who are stepping up to address this challenge head on. They're reshaping workplace cultures to prioritize not just productivity, but also human connection, well being, and authentic work life integration. Today, we're joined by Jeanelle Teves, Chief Commercial Officer of Bugaboo North America, who's been at the forefront of this transformative approach. Jeanelle has made huge strides by implementing progressive workplace policies that support working parents and foster a culture of genuine connection, even in a fully remote environment, which is amazing. What sets Jeanelle apart is not just her innovative approach to leadership, but how she's leveraging social media to showcase these policies in action. And by sharing her own experiences as a working mother and leader, she's adding a powerful, authentic voice to the conversation about work-life integration. Jeanelle, welcome to Unmatched.
Thank you so much for having me, Awana. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, it's a pleasure finally being able to have you on the podcast. We've been trying for quite some time to get you on. So I want to start with this, maybe a little cheeky question. Is it work-life balance or is it work-life integration? What's your point of view?
I actually prefer the term work life harmony. I think that work life balance for me signals that something has to give and that there is this perfectly symmetrical distribution between your personal life and your professional life, which is just unattainable. It's never going to be 50-50. And work life integration is commonly used, but I like work life harmony because it signals fulfillment and it signals joy. Of course, there are so many hard and challenging aspects of being a parent that works outside of the home, but I frequently say this on social media. I don't do it all, but I do what I can most days with great fulfillment. So I like the word harmony because it signals joy.
I really love that, and I'm going to adopt it because I've been also looking for a word that describes this combination of things, this juggling, right? That we always have to go through, and it's not necessarily in a bad way. Like we have to all do different things, right, to make everything around us happen, especially as working parents. What I love about you, Janelle, is that you show, you don't tell, and I love that because it's so easy to talk about work-life harmony, but we don't really know what's behind it for leaders such as yourself. And by sharing your experiences as a working mother on social media, you inspire millions. What led you to making this decision of sharing content on social media? Did it come natural to you? Was it a thought out decision?
So, yeah, let me take you back to 2023, which was just last year. I can't believe it. It was actually my New Year's resolution from at the start of 2023, where I wanted to make this shift from consuming content, which so many of us do, to start creating content and sharing the advice and the tools that I've collected myself from either books or memoirs or the privilege that I've had by working for and observing some of the world's best leaders. And so I made it my 2023 resolution. And for anyone out there that's looking to create content, I will tell you that it wasn't this overnight success. I spoke to really not that many people, probably just my friends and family who already knew me and followed me, and for a long time. But it was a creative outlet. It was something that I really truly enjoyed doing. I've always enjoyed content writing, and social media has given all of us this platform to take that and create our own expression of what's in our minds. And so I started creating content, and then it wasn't until the end of last year, which is not that long ago, where my platform really started to gain traction and started to take off. And now I just have this opportunity to connect with so many women all over the world who it's a real honor to play a small role in someone's personal and professional development. And they'll share with me these stories. Hey, I took this advice and it helped me with my first big presentation, or it helped me during my job interview to get my dream job. Like that, what a privilege, right? And so, yeah, now it's turned into something that is much bigger than me. I really now anything that I create is a question that I'm answering that I've gotten a few times in DMs or a frequently asked question in the weekly Q&As that I hold. And so it's really in service to all the professional women or professionals out there. And maybe I'm in some ways also talking to myself. That was 5 years ago, as I was trying so hard to find inspiration and seek mentorship. And that's really why I create content.
And it's amazing because it's not so often that you see a leader in one of the biggest, companies in the world actually making that decision and actively pursuing sharing their experiences. And I think it's like we're all grateful for what you're sharing because it's a lot that we can learn from you and others like you who are doing that. What role do you see social media playing in sort of the future of marketing for lifestyle for parents? Because also what is interesting, and I think what is really aligned for you, is that you work for a company that addresses parents as well in the scope of their business. And with you and your platform and your personal brand, you're actually kind of doing the same. So there's like a really good alignment there. What are the parallels that you see in between what you do on a personal level and what brands can also do to address this target audience?
Yeah, so let me answer this question in two parts. So I think number one, from a brand perspective, I think we're moving towards this world now where consumers are really interested in who's behind the brand and what are the values of a brand. And I think that actually Gary Vee says it best, that humans want to buy from other humans, not corporations. And so I think even though I started this social media content creation passion as really for me personally as Jeanelle, irrespective of what company I lead, it has actually benefited the brand that I work for, because I am a working parent and there's this intersection with the fact that I work at a parenting brand, and I get dozens of DMs where parents are like, I didn't know Bugaboo, but actually now I'm pregnant. I just found out that I'm pregnant and I really I'm going to buy a Bugaboo stroller because I love what you stand for. So there's really just, I think, this human element of that brands can really take advantage of. And now sitting on the brand side, let me just take my Janelle hat off and put my brand hat on, that there is really this current strategy that a lot of brands use, which is influencer marketing and celebrity endorsements. And what you're essentially doing is you're paying a third party, or you're paying someone that's outside of the organization to be an ambassador for your brand. And I'm sure it's very organic, it's very authentic, that ambassador or that influencer really does genuinely love the brand, but then they're moving on. What better way to create ambassadorship than within your own employees, and with someone that genuinely, like, in and day out, loves the brand and is knows the brand deeply and the brand values. And so I think that there's a lot of benefit to just peeling back the curtain a little bit and sharing, here's our workforce, here's our employees. And you don't have to do it with one person, you can do it with your leadership team. There was a great article that just covered our Bugaboo North America leadership team that's run by women, and that's also run by, coincidentally, parents. And so that's a great alignment with the consumer that we're looking to serve. And so I think that there's a lot of benefit in brands taking a look within their own companies, because the consumer wants it. And then also, who can speak better about the brand, an influencer or one of your own employees, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes for any kind of brand, especially consumer brands, that people can use. And I know from my experience as a parent, I know that when I had my first son, I was looking like crazy online for
Mhm.
references, women that were just having their own first babies as well, and how they were reacting or what products they were buying. So I think it's also very much human nature to look at
Yes.
other people for advice. Have you guys implemented at Bugaboo a sort of, like employee advocacy strategy with regards to that, or was it more organic?
It's very organic. So we have a fully virtual team across the US and Canada. Incredibly collaborative, great chemistry, very engaged, very happy team. And we encourage employees, if they feel inclined, to share a latest campaign or a piece of work to share with their own friends and family. But we don't have a formal program in place. But what we have done is selectively really share who is behind the brand. So whether that's on Mother's Day or any sort of like landmark milestone moment in the calendar. And if we have an opportunity to quote someone on our team or to showcase them in a video, we're starting to do more of that. And we're seeing a lot of really positive engagement and response from those videos. An example of that would be last spring, we participated in a paid leave for all campaign. And that was where 70 brands closed their doors for business for one day in support of federal paid leave for parents. The US is one of very few countries that does not have federal paid leave. And so we took a stance as a brand. Our leadership team decided this is a cause that we need to get behind. Our mission is to empower parents and future generations of parents to discover the world and enjoy. So we decided to stand for that campaign. And what we saw was an incredible engagement and response, not only from consumers, but our employees, our teammates feeling so proud to work for Bugaboo because we took this stand. And so then we see this natural sharing and resharing of that piece of content.
And that again feels very aligned with what you said before. It's
Mm-hmm.
all kind of very organic and very also aligned with your company products, what you guys are selling, and how you want to position yourself in the market. What would be your advice to brands that are trying to address the parents right in the market? How easy or challenging is it, and what are the main things that you need to keep in mind as a brand when you're doing that?
I think for any brand, whether you serve parents or athletes, whomever, the best brands put the consumer at the center of the conversation. So what are the tension points? What are the problems that your consumer is facing? And then you as a brand answering that. Some of the time it's with your product. Some of the time it can actually be with valuable content. So using parents as an example, yes, we have a portfolio of strollers and also other categories like our high chairs and our playpens and our car seats, which solve the needs of new parents. And depending on what kind of parent you are, if you're a parent that lives in a walk up apartment or you're a parent that drives a car, you have different needs. So we are offering our products as a solution to those tension points and problems. And then the second point that I want to make is that maybe it's not about your product. Maybe it's about a resource or a piece of information that can help the parent. And it doesn't always need to be about your product. In that way, you create trust and you foster this relationship that's not about selling, but it's actually about helping your consumer and where they're at in that life stage.
That's super interesting. And I love that you brought that on organically in the conversation, because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a big discussion point. Do you sell the product, or do you sell the story, or do you sell, the advantage that the brand brings to your consumer? And you seem to be on the side of the latter one. How does that, especially in your role as COO, how does that connect to, KPIs? Because this is the favorite topic in big organizations. And sometimes there's this disconnect in between, the fact that, in the end, you're selling the brand and a transformation to the consumer versus those KPIs that seem to be more connected to product
Mm-hmm.
and,
Yeah.
sales and units and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So I think that there's two key KPIs that I would call out. You have lagging KPIs, and then you have leading KPIs. So lagging KPIs are those hard KPIs. What is a sell through to a product? How did this collection perform? Hard sales. And then you have leading KPIs, which are giving you an indication of the health of your business in the future, which is the engagement of your brand, followership, growth. And so both are important depending on where you are in the year. Any business leader will admit that perhaps the sales KPIs are going to really matter if you're in a critical moment of the year that you need to meet your targets. You also have to function as a business, but then there's also brand long-term growth KPIs that we look at. So that's engagement, that's followership, that's just talkability. We do a lot of social media monitoring. Okay, how is our brand being discussed? And so both are important depending where you are in the year, where you are in your journey. If you're listening to this and you are an early stage founder, okay, then your lagging versus leading KPIs are going to be different. If you're a brand with a ton of legacy, it's that distribution is also going to look different too.
Do you separate within Bugaboo what is a global brand campaign versus product campaigns, or do you have a preference for one or the other?
Yes, so Bugaboo is a global brand. We trade in 50 different countries around the world. I look after the North America, so US and Canada. And we run a global business. And so everything that we do needs to first and foremost make sense and tie into our brand fundamentals. We have a global brand book, we have a global look and feel. We need to move and behave like a global brand. But then there are some localizations that we'll take for the North American parent. So depending on that could be a moment like Mother's Day will fall on a different point in the year than it would in other European countries, or it could be something based on insights. So what we know are really important to the American parent will be different from the German parent or from the Spanish parent. So we might take a different approach when it comes to communicating those benefits.
And what is interesting to me is that on top of all that, you lead a fully remote team, which is quite incredible and so forward thinking, especially nowadays with many brands sort of recalling people into the offices. How does that work for you? Let's say, what are the challenges and the benefits, and how do you solve for the challenges these days?
Yeah, let me start with the benefits. So I think right now we're in the day and age where employees really want flexibility. I had a role posted recently and I had over 700 applications for this role and there was massive interest and my calendar was filled with the top 10 candidate interviews. And I asked each of those candidates, what are you looking for in a role? And I left it intentionally open-ended because I wanted to know, are they talking about the roles and responsibilities of this position? Are they going to say something about culture? And 10 out of 10 of those interviewees had said, I'm looking for flexibility. So that told me it's not only important as a company to have those type of flexible work policies and culture, but it's really critical in attaining and attracting and retaining the right talent. So I think that flexibility of being fully virtual has actually made us very competitive when it comes to recruiting. It's also opened up the scope of where we hire from. I think the challenges of that are undeniably as the world moves into further and further away of the pandemic, there are just some things that in person that it's irreplaceable. So a way that we have gotten around that is, okay, how do we strategically come together if we're not in an office every day with each other? Having water cooler conversations? Do we get together quarterly? Do we have our all hands meeting once a year? What does that look like? How do we create the right balance of inspiration and education? So we're constantly looking at making those in-person moments amazing and everyone looks forward to them. And then we go back home and we have our flexible schedules, which everybody still loves.
How often do you guys meet in person? That's super interesting because we're hearing from all around the world different stories and different perspectives, and the team building aspect is
Yep.
always so important, as you mentioned. How often do you guys meet, and what are the sort of the milestones that you found work for you?
So I sit in New York City and I have my core leadership team come into New York City quarterly and we're tracking the progress of the year. We're doing deep strategy work, whiteboard sessions, updating each other on topics that would just otherwise be exhausting to do on Zoom. So we meet quarterly as an entire North America team and then you have to imagine I have people in Canada, across all time zones of the US. We get together at the moment once a year. And that's the full North America team. Outside of that, departments and teams are getting together. We've carved out travel budget for them to get together also quarterly. But as an entire team, I would say once a year, probably moving closer towards twice a year. But I would say that the core cross-functional alignments we're meeting quarterly, which so far it's working. It's working right now for this moment in time. It may look different in the future, but right now for where the brand is, where the business is, where the team is, this really works.
And it sounds really well because in the end, as you said, flexibility is all that everyone wants, whether it is to go into the office. Like I just love going into the office, and that's my flexibility because it just allows me this moment of separation of work and life. And I know that when I come back home, it is my time home with my kids and my family. And then when I'm at work, I'm at work. But I also want to know that if I want to have to, work from home one day, I can do that. And for me, like that's full flexibility. You've worked in so many different industries. You've worked at Nike as well. You've worked in different, countries. You have different cultural backgrounds within your family as well, your heritage. How has that shaped your leadership style? I'm really curious because obviously in working with remote teams and also with cultures from different parts of the world in a big corporate environment as well that is multicultural, I wonder how that has shaped your vision of what leadership is all about.
Yeah, so maybe I can give your listeners a little bit of context. I am a first generation Filipina. I was born and raised in Sacramento, and then I moved to LA for university. And then after that, I worked 1 year before moving to Barcelona for my MBA degree. And then that move really kicked off what would end up being a decade abroad. So I did 1 year in Barcelona. And then after that, I met my partner, my husband, who is Dutch, and we lived in Amsterdam together for 9 years. And when I was in the Netherlands, that's really where my career accelerated. And I joined Nike European headquarters, where my role was to travel around Western Europe and connect in the sport and the lifestyle moments like the Olympics, the Berlin Marathon, Paris Fashion Week, with what was happening onto the website. And Nike is also incredibly international, so there were dozens of different nationalities in one conference room. And then from there, I moved to New York City, also an incredibly diverse city. And now I'm at Bugaboo. So I'm an American now living back in America, and I'm working for a Dutch company. So I travel frequently back to Europe for work. So to answer your question, all of these experiences and all these different life chapters have really, it's been a gift. I've really been able to understand at the root cause of most miscommunications or tensions or arguments is when people don't feel understood. And so I have learned to adapt to different cultural styles in the workplace. I've also learned to ask more questions. And also I've been able to just perceptively pick up when someone isn't feeling heard or feeling frustrated. Because I've worked with so many different nationalities, I also know these different tendencies that tend to come through because of background, culture, race, etc. And so one of the greatest compliments that someone once told me was that I was like a chameleon. I could kind of just blend into any environment that I'm in. So I've been able to become very adaptable. But if I could just summarize it, if you're someone that hasn't lived in multiple countries or maybe you have, I think irregardless if you're growing up in Sacramento or you have this super international career, at the end of the day, people just want to feel understood and heard. And you can overcome any challenge if you just listen. So, okay, tell me, what is your concern here? Okay, what's bothering you? Okay, how can I make this better? People will lead you to the answer, and you will reach a compromise much quicker than trying to shove your agenda towards someone. Just ask a lot of questions, listen, adapt. Don't ever take anything personal. It has very little to do with you, and always what someone is projecting onto you. So it's been an incredible gift and hugely influenceable into who I am today as a leader and as a person, as a mother, as a community member in so many different ways.
And I mean, I personally think it's so important to have that flexibility, and having lived in so many different countries and having worked in different environments, you learn so much about communication. I'm originally Romanian, by the way, and I remember when I moved to Spain, to Madrid, when I was 19, I was there to study. And after a couple of years in the university, I took an internship role at Disney. And that was my first ever job. And I was so excited to be there. I remember how difficult it was to fit in a little bit at the beginning in that work environment, because My culture is very straightforward. We give it as we
Sure.
take it, as we feel, and we're just like saying whatever we feel. It took me a while to really understand how to communicate and not to be too pushy, or, not to
Mhm.
speak too directly about the things that I'm thinking or feeling. Was there any situation like that when you started off where you felt like, okay, like I need to adapt a little bit, parts of, how I was brought up, or, my cultural background in order to sort of fit in this new situation?
I think when it comes to those type of lessons, the biggest lesson that I really learned is actually to be very proud of where I come from and to use it to my unique advantage. And so I lived in the Netherlands for nearly 9 years. And I had my daughter there. I accelerated my career there. I have a Dutch partner, and I really assimilated into the Dutch culture. And it wasn't until I moved to New York where I really started to be quite reflective in my own heritage and where I came from and what being Filipino American means to me, and how this has actually been such a big part of who I am today and some of those values. So, just to give you an example, the Filipino culture is incredibly warm and generous and family centric. And that definitely comes through in my leadership style, in the care that I give to my team. And I think that for a long time, as I was climbing, I tried to be very professional, be very rigid, be very Northern European, because that's where I was living, and the type of family that my husband is, he's Dutch, and so it's just a very different culture, and I've taken so much from that communication style, and it's influenced how I communicate today. But now I've realized, okay, this is really who I am. And as a leader, it's okay to show a side of softness and warmth and care. This doesn't mean that you aren't firm or you aren't holding people accountable to doing what they said that they would do. So it's actually been very recent that I've been able to combine my living environment as an adult and who I am at my core, which is how I was born and raised, and make something that's my unique combination of Jeanelle as a leader, in the business, in the workplace. And there's so many beautiful things from both cultures and both aspects that I've taken and I've borrowed, and I've turned it into my own style. But I wouldn't have been able to get there if it hadn't been for all these years of experience, feedback that I've been given from other managers and bosses, taking that to heart, being very reflective, and also being okay with being vulnerable and saying, okay, this is who I am. And now here I am. I'll continue to develop, by the way. I'm not done. I'm continuing to learn. And yeah, that's really been the greatest influence for me.
And I have to say, I resonate so much with that. And I think it's a matter of age and experience going full circle a little bit on that perception. And I hope that everyone who's listening at home, who are starting out in their careers and maybe
Mhm.
feeling out of place or feeling that they don't belong, I hope that they hear from you, especially, and also from me, from my experiences, that actually you do belong in a unique way. And this is what Unmatched actually is all about, this unique mix of experiences and personality traits and who you're from and your family background and so on, that makes you you. And at the beginning, it sounds like it's a liability, but it's actually a superpower. And we talk about this all the time. Unfortunately, you don't really recognize that at the beginning. I wish, you had like a perfect leader in front of you that would sit you down and say, hey, Jeanelle, you're just amazing as you are, and just like be proud of who you are. But at the beginning, there's insecurity, there's a lot of learning happening, and that's absolutely part of the process. I wonder if you get a lot of those messages in those DMs that you're getting on social media. What are the typical questions that people are asking you that they want to know?
We're all really the same, really. I think that a lot of the DMs that I get are around self development. I'm at this point in my life and I'd like to get to this point. So, whether that's someone that doesn't yet have children and they're afraid that they're not going to be able to handle all the responsibilities, and they see a positive role model that it is possible to do many different things, that's one. Another commonly asked question is I'm a manager and I'd like to become a director, or I'm a director and I'd like to become a VP. And so this type of striving and how did you do this or that also tends to come up. There's also very practical questions around, I am on maternity leave. What is the best way to return from maternity leave? And so that's another example. But I think to your point and to around developing your own leadership style, what I would say is two things. One, borrow from people who inspire you. They can be from the people like your favorite boss that you've ever had, or maybe even someone that's distant from you, a leader in your organization. You just like how they move, you like how they speak. Observe them, pay attention, and borrow what resonates with you, and be inspired by that, and then take it and make it yours. So that's one. There's a saying that success leaves clues. And so if you take a look around you, and they can even be like authors, they can be public figures, they could be political figures, borrow from them and then make it your own. So that's one. And then two, just be really reflective on what you bring. Even if you're at the very start of your career and you haven't had any experience managing people, ask your closest three friends, or ask your family members, the people that you trust, what am I good at? How do I show up in a room? And they will play back to you what you're known for, what your personal brand is. And so you take those two things and you put them together, and you continue just working and developing it. That becomes your leadership style. That becomes who you are as a manager, as a leader, as a professional, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, whatever you want to be.
And also to one point that you made earlier about the fact that, you don't have to appear perfect, that you can have a
Mhm.
soft side. One of the things that I absolutely love about social media is that you are now able to go behind the scenes of someone that you admire's life and understand what it takes for that person to be who they are and do what you do. And I think you especially are doing such a great job at being so transparent about how you manage your travel and how you co-parent with your husband and how he supports you as well, and how you work full time and he's
Mhm.
at home with the kids, and then you kind of
Mhm.
exchange roles and you cover for him. I find that amazing. And I think for me, what this shows is that it really just takes a village. It's not true that we can do it all, have it all by just us being super women. We need support. And I would love for you to maybe talk about that a little bit, so we can dispel a little bit some of those myths that people maybe think about, or women specifically might have in their minds about like what it takes to be not just a working mother, but at the level that you work for this big company with all these responsibilities and travel that you have to do on a weekly basis.
Yeah, so I share indeed selectively parts of my life and how I manage the different responsibilities. And I think as a working parent, or just as a parent in general, if you have multiple interests, multiple passions, multiple responsibilities, there will always be conflicting priorities. And how you handle those conflicting priorities, how I handle my conflicting priorities, is what I try and share about. So the setup of our home indeed is that I work full time. I work at Bugaboo. And then my husband, when I started this job, made the decision to be at home with our kids. This was at the start of things coming back from the pandemic. And we decided as a family that we wanted one of us to be home with our kids. And when my daughter was first born, I stayed home with her for a year. And then when we welcomed our son, and as we were both looking to return into the office or return to work, he decided to stay at home with them. And I say we both actually work, but we just work in different ways. So I work and I manage a board of directors and my boss and my team, and he manages our home and our children and our family logistics. And so I think what works for us is that we have just this understanding of we're both dealing with different workloads. Our day to day looks very different, but we're both feeling the same emotions, which on any given day can feel stressed. It can also feel very tired. It can feel maybe sometimes defeated, or some days it could feel quite successful. And we try and check in with one another. How are you feeling? And we try and pick up the pieces when the other person is feeling a little bit down. And I will be the first one to admit some days I bring my work home with me and I might feel frustrated. And he does a really great job of picking me up those days. And then some days he has a really hard time with our children. If our son is teething or our daughter is going through something at school and it's particularly exhausted him. I might be tired when I get home, but I try my best to see that and then say, "Hey, I've got dinner. Why don't you go for like a quick 15-minute walk and I will get dinner on the table and you come back." Those small things really matter. They matter to the both of us. And so we just try and be in tune. And again, it's not perfect. I really want to say that no marriage is perfect. We try our very best. But we do, I think we try and show up for each other in little ways on the everyday.
That's really great. And I feel like this resonates with me as well because I have such a good partnership with my husband as well. In a
Mhm.
similar way, we sort of, come through for each other at different moments of the day. And it's really useful, especially when you, in my case, now I'm in a position where I'm building a new
Mhm.
company and a new business, and it takes a toll in a different way. And it brings, a lot of different energies throughout the day that, something I'm learning about that as well. So you do need that partnership at home to really sort of support you, but also vice versa, that you understand that when you're done with work, they also need support in the same way. Janelle, to kind of like bring our conversation to the end, what is the one thing that, from your position at Bugaboo, working with, remote teams and having a product that speaks to parents, what are you mostly excited about in this new era of work that we are sort of like going towards? There's so many things that are shifting. You've spoken a lot about, remote work and those strategies and how it works for you guys, but there's so much more. There's so many shifts with technology upon us and freelance working and working from home and leaner structures. Like, what is the one thing that you feel like so excited about, that you see an opportunity for working parents and in general for brands to look forward to?
I think that we're moving into this era right now where consumers are really expecting brands to stand for something and to be very intentional and purposeful. And at Bugaboo, our mission is to empower parents and future parents. And now more than ever, I am challenging myself and also challenging our teams. How are we doing this externally for our consumers by providing them with the most incredible designs and safe products that help them go through this new chapter of parenthood? But then also, how are we doing that internally? How are we living these values as a team? Taking a look at our policies formally. So, what does our employee handbook look like? Are these policies reflective of being in support of our team? And then also informally, how do we behave? What are our habits? What's our meeting cadence? What is our tolerance for failure? What is our tolerance for admitting when we make mistakes, asking for help? So, all of these actual informal behaviors are directly related to supporting parents. So, I think just to summarize, I'm really excited that there's this pressure or there's this expectation now from brands to stand for something for your consumers, but then also live those values internally and build your culture to be reflective of what you say is your brand mission. So that's really the journey that we're on right now at Bugaboo. Of course, through the types of products that we create. We just launched a new one, the Bugaboo Kangaroo, which is the first stroller to go from single to double to up to 3 children that we're really proud of. That just launched this month. But then also, again, within our behaviors and our values and our team culture and how we behave as a team. So I am really looking forward to everything to come. And if you're a consumer, if you're an expecting parent or a future parent, you can find out more by following us on Bugaboo USA. I'm also on social. You can follow me at Jeanelle Teves. And yeah, I'm just really excited for what's coming up next by the end of the year.
And as a former consumer, because I'm not anymore, my kids are, older, so I don't need to use a stroller. I can say thank you for the great products because they are amazing and they do extremely well for what we need them to perform. But also, I would say, as a marketer, I am so impressed by how well you guys are doing this, how well aligned you have those values with the needs of your consumers, and how you're showing, not just telling. And I think this is so important, across the board, internally, externally. There's not a lot of, let's say, references and good benchmarks to look at, but you guys definitely are one. So thank you so much, Jeanelle, for taking the time to speak to us today. And I'm excited to see what's coming from Bugaboo in the future.
Thank you, Awana. I really enjoyed it.